Imagine standing guard at the gates of a great fortress, not one built of stone, but of something far more valuable, your inner peace. This fortress, your emotional citadel, is constantly under threat, not from armies or invaders, but from the quiet, creeping influence of toxic people. Their weapons are subtle: manipulation, negativity, guilt, but their impact? Profound. Chapter 1. The first line of defense, recognizing the toxic threat in a world obsessed with external battles. The Stoics remind us that the most important war is the one we wage within. Epictetus, the freed slave turned philosopher, taught that it is not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. So what happens when the threat isn't a sword, but a snide remark, a guilt trip, or a draining conversation? This is the first fall, the realization that the enemy isn't always visible, but it is always real. To defend your inner peace, you must first become a watchful sentinel. Learn to identify the red flags. Toxic people don't always announce themselves with cruelty or hostility. Often, they arrive wrapped in charm or false concern. There's the constant critic, who never seems satisfied with your choices. Their words don't guide, they erode. You begin to second-guess yourself, doubt your worth, and question your path. The manipulator, skilled in deception. They flatter, then guilt you. They pretend to advise, but aim to control. Your time, your emotions, your energy, they want it all. There's the emotional vampire, who drains your vitality, not with anger, but with endless negativity. Their pessimism is contagious, pulling everyone around them into a fog of despair. And perhaps most dangerous of all, the narcissist. They feed on admiration, demand your attention, and offer nothing in return. At first, they're magnetic, but over time, their charm becomes a cage. This is the turning point, the inner shift. You begin to map the terrain, just like a Roman general studying the battlefield before the fight. Awareness is your first weapon. It doesn't strike, but it shields. Seneca, the Stoic statesman, believed that foreseeing adversity is the first step toward enduring it. So too with toxic people. The moment you see the pattern, the spell breaks. You stop reacting blindly. You start choosing your responses. This brings us to the second fall, and the quiet revelation that no one enters your fortress unless you let them. The drawbridge is yours to raise. In the ancient world, citadels were built to last. So must be your defenses, not through aggression, but clarity. Not through confrontation, but composure. Before we move forward, reflect on this. How many times have you allowed someone to walk through the gates of your peace without earning that right? This is where the Stoic journey begins, not with confrontation, but with recognition. And from that awareness, a new strength is born. Chapter 2. Fortify your walls, the discipline of boundaries. Now that you've identified the threat, the next question is, will you stand exposed, or will you build the walls that protect your peace? Picture Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, seated in quiet reflection after a day of war councils and political unrest. Despite ruling an empire, he never forgot the one realm he truly controlled: his mind. His journal, Meditations, reads like a blueprint for emotional sovereignty. This is your first emotional fall, the humbling realization that you've left your gates wide open far too often. Not because you are weak, but because you didn't know. The strength that comes from setting firm boundaries. Boundaries are not barriers to love or connection. They are the architecture of self-respect. Without them, we become defenseless. Our peace, a playground for those who feed on chaos. A toxic person doesn't need to shout to damage you. They only need access. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't build emotional walls from fear, but from reason. Epictetus taught that we must distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. And perhaps nothing is more within your control than who you allow into your mental space. Begin here. Identify the trespasses. What behaviors, conversations, or relationships drain you? Is it the coworker who always leaves you tense after every interaction? The family member who constantly guilts you? The friend who only calls when they need something? Name them. Without clarity, there is no defense. Next, take action, not with rage, but with reason. The Stoic way is not explosive. It is composed. You do not need to justify your boundaries to anyone, but you do need to express them clearly and stand by them relentlessly. Try this. Instead of saying, "You're always so negative," say, "I feel emotionally drained when our conversations revolve around constant problems." Instead of the vague, "I need space," say, "I'm unavailable to talk right now. Let's reconnect later in the week." These are not just words, they are the stones that build your wall. And now we reach the second fall, the painful truth that some will resist these walls. Toxic people will push, guilt, escalate. Why? Because your boundaries threaten their control. Your silence exposes their noise. Your restraint reveals their chaos. But hold firm, just as the Roman frontier required constant vigilance to repel invading forces, so too do your emotional boundaries require consistency. A wall isn't strong because it was once built. It is strong because it is continually guarded. Stoicism does not teach us to shut out the world. It teaches us to engage with it wisely. And in a world where emotional manipulation is disguised as connection, wisdom begins with the word no. Boundaries are not selfish. They are self-respect made visible. They are the quiet, powerful act of saying, "This far, no further." So ask yourself, are you building a fortress, or are you hoping the storm passes without consequence? Because in the Stoic path, peace is not inherited. It is constructed. Chapter 3. Become uninteresting to the emotional barbarian. Imagine an emotional barbarian at the gates, loud, relentless, and desperate for battle. This enemy doesn't carry a sword. They carry sarcasm, guilt, and provocation. They don't want peace. They want a reaction. For many toxic people, your emotional response is their victory. They thrive on chaos, feed on drama, and drink from the well of your frustration. The more you fight back, the more alive they feel. This is the first fall, realizing that your reactions have been their fuel all along. But what if you stopped playing their game? What if you became boring? Here's where Stoicism offers one of its most counterintuitive but powerful tools: emotional neutrality. Enter the gray rock method, a concept rooted in detachment and refined by those seeking to escape emotional predators. Its core idea is simple: offer nothing for them to latch onto. Think of a gray rock, unmoving, unremarkable, unreactive. When you present yourself in this way, the emotional barbarian loses interest. No spark, no fire, no drama. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When facing the emotionally volatile, our imagination often creates internal storms. What if they escalate? What if they hate me? What if I'm seen as cold? But Stoicism teaches us to separate fear from fact. Here's the truth: toxic people escalate only when you reward their bait with emotion. Without that, their strategy collapses. So how does this work in practice? If someone insults you, instead of defending or retaliating, reply with calm detachment. That's an interesting opinion. If someone tries guilt, don't explain yourself endlessly. Simply say, "I'm not available for that right now." If someone prods for drama, respond in facts, not feelings. End the conversation if needed. Disengage without apology. You're not shutting down your humanity. You're turning off the emotional faucet they want to drink from. Now comes the second fall, understanding that detachment is not weakness. It's wisdom. You see, many fear becoming cold or uncaring, but the Stoic doesn't aim to be heartless. They aim to be in control. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." By choosing not to react, you claim your freedom from their manipulation. Yes, some may escalate. They may push harder, insult louder, try new tactics. Let them. Their fury exposes their own emptiness. You, by contrast, remain a mountain silent, solid, immovable dot, because in Stoicism, power does not shout. It doesn't throw punches. It endures in silence. It chooses stillness when chaos demands a war. So next time a toxic person seeks to pull you into their emotional theater, remember this. Their play only continues if you show up. Be the gray rock. Be unmoved. Be forgotten by those who thrive on noise, and remembered by yourself as someone who finally refused to bleed for another person's entertainment. Chapter 4. The Broken Record. Reclaiming power through repetition. You've said no, but they keep asking. You've set the boundary, but they push again. You've made yourself clear, yet somehow you're back in the same exhausting conversation. Sound familiar? Toxic people thrive on erosion. They chip away slowly, disguised as logic, concern, or persistence. They don't seek understanding, they seek submission. This is the first fall. The exhausting realization that clarity alone doesn't always end the conflict. So how do you hold your ground when someone refuses to listen? The Stoics offer a solution, both deceptively simple and surprisingly powerful. Repetition. Not the frantic kind that pleads to be heard, but the calm, deliberate voice of the broken record. The broken record technique isn't about volume. It's about resolve. It mirrors the Stoic discipline of unwavering principle. You state your boundary, and then you state it again and again, without anger, without variation, without deviation. I'm not available for that. I already gave you my answer. That doesn't work for me. Repeat as needed. Epictetus taught, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. That freedom includes the ability to say no without explanation, without guilt, and without engaging in endless justifications that only open the door wider. Because here's the Stoic insight. Manipulators don't need you to agree with them. They just need you to engage. They feed off your defenses, your explanations, your backpedaling. And the more you explain, the deeper you're pulled into their game. This leads us to the second fall, the quiet power of unwavering speech. Imagine a wave slamming again and again into a massive stone wall. The wall doesn't scream. It doesn't shift. It simply is. Eventually, the wave tires. So too with you. You don't need to outwit the manipulator. You don't need to emotionally outmaneuver them. You just need to hold your line. This is not cruelty. It's discipline. You are not ignoring them. You are protecting yourself. You are not escalating. You are ending the cycle. And yes, it will frustrate them. They may grow louder, more dramatic, more insistent. Let them. Your calm repetition disrupts their strategy. Your refusal to argue leaves them exposed. And your quiet strength teaches them something their chaos never could. That peace cannot be stolen from someone who refuses to surrender it. In the Stoic world, virtue is action, not reaction. So the next time you're pulled into that endless loop with a toxic person trying to wear you down, remember, be the record, be the wall, and let their storm break on your stillness. Chapter 5. Don't take the bait. The Stoic art of strategic indifference. Picture this. A fisherman casts his line into the water, not out of hunger, but out of habit. He doesn't care what bites he, just wants something to react. This is how toxic people operate. They bait you with sarcasm, veiled insults, passive aggression, or guilt. And the moment you respond emotionally, anger, defensiveness, frustration, they've won. The first fall comes quickly. That sting of realization that you've been hooked. Again, why does it happen? Because your natural instinct is to defend your worth, to correct the lie, to demand fairness. But the Stoics ask a different question. Does this response serve your peace? More often than not, it DOESN single quotes T. This is where strategic indifference becomes your shield. Now, let's make one thing clear. Stoic indifference is not coldness. It's not apathy. The Stoics didn't advocate detachment from life. They encouraged emotional clarity. The goal isn't to feel nothing. The goal is to feel only what is useful. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So when someone dangles drama in front of you, realize this. It's not the bait that harms you. It's the choice to bite. Begin by recognizing the bait. A backhanded compliment, a question designed to shame, a joke that cuts deep, a guilt trip wrapped in false concern. Once you see it, freeze the frame. Pause. Ask, is this about truth or control? If it's the latter, respond with calm neutrality or not at all. A toxic person might say, "Wow, must be nice to ignore your family all the time." Instead of taking the bait, you say, "I choose how I spend my time." No argument. No justification. Just the stillness of a mind that knows itself. The second fall comes not with pain, but with power. You realize you no longer need to attend every argument you're invited to. The bait loses its flavor when it no longer hooks you. And without your reaction, the manipulation floats useless, weightless, exposed. This is what Epictetus meant when he taught, when someone provokes you, remember that it is not the person who insults you that is upsetting. It is your opinion about the insult. So change the opinion. Starve the drama. Stay free. Here's a truth the emotionally immature can't stand. Silence cannot be controlled. Calmness cannot be coerced. Indifference is invisible armor, and once you wear it, the world loses its power to shake you. So next time you feel the urge to fire back, to correct, to explain, to defend, pause. Breathe. Smile, even. And let the bait sink untouched. Because in the game of emotional control, the greatest move is not to play. Chapter 6. The Art of the Non-Reaction. When silence becomes strength, there's a kind of person who treats conversation like a battleground. Every word is a weapon. Every sentence a trap. They provoke, insult, escalate, not because they seek truth, but because they crave dominance. They want you flustered. They want you angry. They want your peace disturbed because it proves they still have control. This is the first fall. The uncomfortable truth that many people don't want resolution, they want reaction. We've all been there. That moment when someone says something just sharp enough to sting. Your body tenses. Your mind scrambles for the perfect comeback. You want to defend your honor, your intelligence, your value. But that urge is the trap. Stoicism teaches us that the highest form of power is restraint. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And so, the Stoic learns the rarest of all skills, the non-reaction. Silence is not passivity. It is precision. Non-reaction is not weakness. It is mastery. Imagine someone throwing verbal daggers at you, expecting you to throw them back. Instead, you stand still, calm, unmoved. Their aggression echoes into silence, and suddenly, it's exposed for what it is: desperation. The Stoics understood this dynamic intimately. Seneca advised that we not waste energy arguing over what virtue looks like, just be virtuous. In other words, stop proving, start embodying. Here's how the art of non-reaction works in practice. When insulted, remain calm. When challenged, unfairly respond, only when reason demands, not emotion. When baited, let silence speak louder than retaliation ever could. Now comes the second fall. The rising discomfort of silence. Yes, silence unnerves people, especially the toxic ones. They will escalate. They may mock your calm. They may accuse you of arrogance, coldness, or cowardice. Let them. Their need for noise reveals their fear of stillness. Yours does not. Think of a tennis player serving the ball with full force only to find no opponent across the net. The ball thuds unreturned. The game never begins. That's what your silence does. It ends a battle before it starts. But here's the real secret, the part most people overlook. The non-reaction isn't just for them. It's for you. When you resist the urge to retaliate, you protect your nervous system. You preserve your clarity. You remain rooted in your values, not dragged into someone else's storm. And over time, something powerful happens. You no longer need to win arguments. You no longer seek the last word. You no longer give strangers the power to dictate your mood. Because silence, properly used, isn't absence. It's presence. It's power. It's peace made visible. So next time someone tries to pull you into their chaos with cruel words or emotional theatrics, remember, you are not obligated to respond. You are not required to fight. You are free to choose silence. And sometimes the strongest voice is the one that doesn't speak. Chapter 7. Emotional minimalism. Remove what weighs you down. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack through the desert. At first, it feels manageable. But mile after mile, the weight begins to crush you. Not because of one heavy item, but because you refuse to let anything go. This is how many of us carry toxic relationships. We accumulate grievances, tolerate small abuses, and convince ourselves it's not that bad. But over time, the emotional load becomes unbearable. And here comes the first fall. The sobering realization that most of our emotional exhaustion doesn't come from what we face, but from what we allow. The Stoics practiced a kind of spiritual discipline we might call emotional minimalism. Just as they owned few possessions, they refused to carry unnecessary attachments, especially those that harmed their inner peace. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Now take this a step further. It is not people themselves who drain us, but the place we continue to give them in our lives. So how do we apply this? Step 1. Take inventory. Who in your life repeatedly leaves you feeling anxious, inadequate, or depleted? Who drains your energy more than they contribute to it? Who do you walk on eggshells around? Write it down. Don't excuse. Don't justify. Just name it. That's where clarity begins. Step 2. Assess the weight. The Stoics teach that time is the most precious currency. So ask yourself, what is this relationship costing me in peace, focus, and self-respect? Because the highest cost isn't money or time. It's the person you become when you stay in environments that poison your spirit. Now comes the second fall, the difficult choice to release what no longer serves your peace. This doesn't always mean dramatic exits or confrontations. Often, it's a quiet recalibration, less time, fewer responses. Emotional detachment, a shift from presence to distance, from people-pleasing to self-preserving. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable. But remember, comfort is not a reliable guide for growth. Seneca reminded us, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Not perfect people, not easy people, but those who elevate your inner life, not erode it. Minimalism doesn't mean you feel less. It means you protect what you feel most. It means recognizing that every person you keep close becomes a resident in your mental space. And your mind, your fortress, has limited room. Who are you still allowing in out of habit? Guilt or fear? And what would it look like to walk lighter, freer? In the end, emotional minimalism is not the absence of love. It is the refining of it. It is choosing depth over obligation, clarity over chaos, and alignment over attachment. And in the quiet that follows, you'll feel it. The weight lifting, the mind clearing, the peace returning. Because once you let go of what no longer belongs, you finally make room for what was meant to grow. Final chapter. The quiet power of walking away. Of now seeing the truth behind toxic connections, not from a place of judgment, but from clarity. You've learned the strength of silence, the strategy of detachment, and the sacred duty you have to protect your peace. But here's the final lesson. You don't need to explain your boundaries. You don't need to justify your distance. You don't need to fight to be understood. You simply need to walk away with stillness, with self-respect, and without looking back. Because the ones who weaponize your loyalty, the ones who mistake your patience for weakness, the ones who only love the version of you they can control, they were never holding your future, only your delay. And as you let go, you'll feel it. A new kind of power rising, quiet, unshakable. Yours. If this message spoke to something deep in you, if it reminded you of the strength you've always had, but forgot, then I invite you to subscribe to Stoic Alchemist. Here, we don't chase noise. We forge stillness. We don't seek revenge. We seek elevation. And we don't just survive. We transform. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because every week, we uncover ancient truths from modern storms. And you're not alone in this journey. Now go forward. Not louder, but wiser.